Yes, there is something I want to ask you.
All right.
How the fuck do you write so many books so fast?
It has now been 11 years since George R.R. Martin released A Dance with Dragons, the series that TV watchers would know as Game of Thrones.
You are my queen. I don't know what else I can say.
His first 3 books were written in 2-year intervals, then 5, then 6, and the rest is history. But what's the reason it has taken him so long? And how come as far back as 2015 he thought he could finish The Winds of Winter before the end of the year? We're going to look back on years of blogs and statements that seem to hint towards the real reason behind his delay. George R.R. Martin released his first book in the A Song of Ice and Fire series back in 1996. He then released the sequel 2 years later in 1998, and the third book 2 years later again in the year 2000. But then something began to change, and he diverged from his 2-year release schedule. And instead, he released the 4th book 5 years later in 2005. At this point, the A Song of Ice and Fire series had begun to gain a lot of traction, and this resulted in an increasingly large fan base demanding more books. This became evident in the wait for his 5th book, A Dance with Dragons. In a blog post from early 2010, George R.R. Martin says this: No. Geez guys, calm down. This is why I hate to do updates. I say I have a good day, and immediately I have 100 people deciding that this means The Dance of Dragons is finished. When I finish Dance, you'll know it. Additionally, there are people even back then who had begun to fear he wouldn't finish the series at the current writing speed, berating him for everything from going on book tours to watching football games, just in case the author, self-described as 60 years old and fat, was about to die before finishing his epic story. You don't want me to pull a Robert Jordan on you, Martin blogged to the circling hordes of hungry readers. In case you don't know, Robert Jordan is the famous author of The Wheel of Time who tragically died back in 2007 before he could finish off the series. Eventually though, George R.R. Martin released his now most recent book, A Dance with Dragons, 6 years after A Feast for Crows in 2011. And after that, the TV series Game of Thrones became a smash hit, skyrocketing George R.R. Martin's already very successful career. But I think the TV series was the beginning of the many issues and problems he'd have with writing the next book. After the release of A Dance with Dragons in 2011, George R.R. Martin made a statement that in hindsight was way off. Martin hoped that the last book will go a little quicker than this one has, and estimated that it would take 3 years to finish the next one at a good pace. In other words, he originally expected to release The Winds of Winter in late 2014. But when he missed that target, he set himself a goal of releasing The Winds of Winter at least a week before the release of the 6th season of the TV series. But for that to happen, he'd have to meet a Halloween turn-in 2015. In May of 2015, George R.R. Martin believed that goal to be reachable, but as he got closer and closer to the deadline, he came to the realization that he wouldn't be able to make it before October 31st. But when he went to the publishers with this depressing news, he was very relieved to hear that they would be able to squeeze it out in time if he turned in the manuscript before the end of the year. But by January 2016, George R.R. Martin shared a sad message on his blog. You wanted an update, here's the update. You won't like it. The Winds of Winter is not finished. For months now, I have wanted nothing so much as to be able to say I have completed and delivered The Winds of Winter on or before the last day of 2015. But the book's not done. Here it is, the 1st of January, the book is not done, not delivered, no words can change that. I tried, I promise you, I failed. I blew the Halloween deadline, and now I've blown the end of the year deadline. It's crazy to think it's been 6.5 years since then, and The Winds of Winter still doesn't seem close. Back then, he said the deadline he'd set for himself stressed him out and eventually slowed him down. So he went back to his original stance, it will be done when it's done. He said that he thought he could be done sometime in 2016. When 2017 came, he said the same thing. But 2017 came and went, and so did 2018 and 2019 and 2020 and 2021. And in 2022, fans had to wake up to another dim statement. I look around and I don't know where 2021 went. I did, however, get a lot of work done in 2021. An enormous amount of work in truth. I seem to have an enormous number of projects. I know. For many of you out there, only one of those projects matters. I'm sorry for you, they all matter to me. And in 2022 especially, his focus seemed to have grown increasingly distant from The Winds of Winter. Instead, many of his blog posts focuses on his tours, and some of the more recent ones focusing on his new spin-off series, The House of the Dragon. But how come he still hasn't finished? To some, it even seems like he's given up. First off, I think one of the big reasons is the TV show. For one, I think the TV show skyrocketing him to fame made him a lot more busy. As he himself has stated, he played a huge part in the production of the TV series, as well as increasingly many tours and interviews. But there might also be a more depressing reason. His blog posts seem to hint at the fact that the TV show surpassed his book series after season 5 has served as a huge demotivating factor for him. He has also repeatedly discussed how he intends to handle the spoilers from the later seasons in his next books. As it's universally known that George R.R. Martin did share spoilers and future plans for his book series to the showrunners David and Dan. Also, I think the fact that people now look to his books to save what the TV series destroyed in the last seasons has put a lot of pressure on him.
You are my queen.
He doesn't want to disappoint, and I think he's definitely afraid of that. Because the fact is, he hasn't stopped writing. He's just not writing The Winds of Winter. He worked on the very popular game Elden Ring, he released a book in 2018 about the Targaryen history, and, as he did with the previous series, he has played a huge part in production of the new spin-off series, The House of the Dragon. And I think the reason for his distractions could very well be fear. He's afraid that people will be dissatisfied, that people won't be happy with what he releases after waiting so long. And that might also be the reason why he is continuously revising The Winds of Winter, going back and changing previous chapters he wrote years ago. What people were afraid of back before the release of A Dance with Dragons might very well become a reality. Back then, he was in his early 60s. Now, he is 73. And if The Winds of Winter is finally released, he has to write another book of a similar length before he's finished with the series. And who's going to say that that's going to be any faster? It is undoubtedly a shame that the book has taken so long and that the TV show, to a degree, destroyed the reputation of his series.
You will rule wisely and well, while she
Is my queen.
I think George R.R. Martin is a man who was severely demotivated when his series was spoiled in an inferior form, and I think he was a man crushed by the expectations and the fear of not living up to them. But although the future projections might be dim, we can't lose hope just yet. There's always a chance that he gets back on track and writes the last book just fast enough so that he doesn't, as some fans put it, pull a Robert Jordan on us. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please go watch 2 of my other videos. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and if you have time, leave a comment. Have a good time, guys.